What's up guys, it's me, Coach Mills, and in this video we're going to be breaking down every hero from hardest to easiest to master in Overwatch. Now, I have no delusion that this is going to tilt a lot of people, but if you don't agree with any of these that I put on this list, definitely let me know in the comments down below. Do me a huge solid and smash that like and subscribe button, and let's get into the video. Now, the first character that we have, and it's going to just be in random order, is Baptiste. And while I do think that there is some amount of advanced things that you need to know on Baptiste, you have to have good mechanics if you want to master him, really great timing with immortality, placing it correctly. Baptiste is forgiving for your position, of course, because he can move around. He has self-healing for himself, burst self-healing, and he has his exo boots. And his ultimate isn't really tricky, and honestly, his mechanics aren't like insane to master or anything like that. Most of his abilities don't have any mechanical aspect to it. So overall, he's fairly easy. Do I think he's the easiest character to master in the game? No, but I think he is probably C. I think that's pretty fair. And the next character that we got to talk about is Bastion, and Bastion is fairly simple, and he doesn't really have any crazy mobility, he doesn't really have any crazy mechanics. While tracking can be a bit difficult if you're just shooting his primary fire, when you're in turret form, I mean, mastering tracking is just part of your aim overall. And I think while there are some jumps and little hops you could do on the character with your mind on yourself, for the most part, mastering this character doesn't take a ton. I don't necessarily think he deserves here, but he's a bit easier to master than Baptiste. I could probably see him at the bottom of C tier, but he might be moved to even easiest when we get towards or through this list a little bit more. Now let's talk about Brig, and especially with the new change to Brig with the armor packs, the 3 armor packs, the instant heal, and just overall, not only do you have to like actively manage your inspire if you're mastering this character, but managing the packs and using them perfectly across the members of your team, I think is fairly difficult. It's a lot more difficult than some of the things you have to do with Bab. Overall, I don't think that she's the most difficult character to master by any means. You don't really need that much aim required on her, and there's a ton of other factors that like are not needed. No advanced mechanics for your ultimate or anything like that, but still harder than these characters. I'm putting her in the B tier, and that might be subject to change. We'll move this around as we go. Now we gotta talk about Cassidy. Cassidy's a weird situation as well because his nade, super simple. His positioning can be a bit tricky, of course, because you don't have great mobility and you could be target of a lot of abilities. And of course, the aim aspect of it makes him a bit harder, right? As far as like mastering his aim, I mean, what is actually truly mastery? We could take someone like top 500 aim or Overwatch League aim. Of course, you could always get better and better all the way to freaking Pine, but realistically, like what I would consider like near mastery or mastery on the character, fairly good aim, I think is attainable, but not even close to like these. I would probably put Cassidy either in A or top of B. We'll probably keep him at the top of B for now. I think that Brig is going to be like down here, but I don't think that Cass deserves these. I don't really think that he's anywhere near as difficult to master as a lot of the characters on this list. So yeah, we'll get there in a second. Doomfist. Doomfist is pretty hard to master. There's a lot about Doomfist as far as how you play certain matchups, a lot of the mechanical aspects, bouncing and advanced techs on the character. There's a lot to him. Now, I don't necessarily think he's the hardest character to master in the game, but I do think that he's among the hardest, and especially if the hardest is going to have like more than 5 characters, I think he deserves to be at least towards the bottom of hardest. So I'm putting him in the hardest tier. I can see the justification to put him in A, but I do think he's one of the harder characters to play and master specifically in the game. Speaking of which, let's talk about D.Va, and this one's going to be a bit controversial because a lot of people are going to assume that D.Va is simple and easy to master, but she's not. And when I say master, I mean do everything you could possibly do on this character. She can freaking eat ultimates. She can shut down enemies. She can track. You can have amazing tracking with the character. Honestly, and this is as someone that doesn't even really grind D.Va. I mainly grind Doom. I think D.Va is like one of the hardest characters to truly master in the game. Now, her base level, her skill floor is what I would call it, is much higher than Doom, right? At a base level, an average person or a base level person will do way more with D.Va than Doomfist. But as far as the ceiling is concerned, there's like infinite potential on what you can accomplish on D.Va. You could track ultimates, you could shut down things. She's game sense, tracking oriented. You got to be everywhere at once, and you have the means to do so. I think that she is actually above Doom as one of the hardest characters in the game to master. Next up, let's talk about Echo. We're getting a lot of freaking hard ones, like back to back to back here, because Echo is damn hard, okay? Echo is one of the hardest characters to master. Again, I think that she's a candidate for the hardest tier. I mean, not only is her ultimate incredibly hard to master, because you have to ult the right targets and be good at them generally, but you need tracking, you need projectile fire to be good at both, good mobility. I would say that she is probably here. I think that like D.Va at the truly highest end is a bit harder. I think that might be close, but I think both of them are harder than Doomfist. So I'm going to put her here. I don't know. This is a little bit hard. I can see the justification. Some people, I could see someone justifying that Echo is one of the hardest characters to master in the entire game. I do think that she at least deserves hardest, but I don't know where. Genji. Now, Genji's going to be another controversial one because a lot of people are going to want to put him in hardest. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I've played Genji a ton, and I've climbed with Genji for many, many years. And I don't necessarily think that Genji deserves the same level as some of these. I do think he's hard to learn. Of course, he's hard to master. But there's a certain like threshold of mastery that I think is not necessarily impossible to achieve, nor is it as hard as some of the other characters. Genji's pretty forgivable for a lot of his actions. Some of his actions are like more simplified. Deflect allows him to be positionally safer. I think he's hard, but I don't necessarily think he deserves the top down, especially because he no longer has like the advanced combos that he used to have. Back in Overwatch 1, he had some one-shot combos, some more advanced combos, some 180 melee like shuriken combos that were very consistent and necessary, that like really mattered. Now that stuff just doesn't matter nearly as much. I would probably put him at the very top of A. This one might get me a little bit of flack, but I just don't think that he touches the characters at the top, the top of the most difficult to master characters in the entire game. I don't think so. Hanzo. Hanzo's weird, okay? Because we all know, like, most Hanzo is not really that phenomenal or amazing or anything like that, but what about mastery of this character? And we know what mastery looks like. We've all seen freaking Arge or just like some of the crazy Hanzos in the Overwatch League. We've also seen oh man, now I can't even remember who the Hanzo was that used to be really notorious. What was his name again? And of course, we've all seen Raxu pull off some phenomenal stuff. I think that Hanzo, his aim is very difficult to master. One of the hardest mechanical aims to master in the entire game, because it's so different from not only just like shooters in like Overwatch, but shooters in general. I think it's just really hard to fully master. I'm actually going to put him in the A tier. I think Hanzo's harder to master than Cass by a fair margin. Not quite to Genji's level, though, so I'm putting him in A tier. Junker Queen. Now, to master Junker Queen, I don't think that there is a crazy amount of things. Most of it is just hitting your knife, which is really important. Of course, there's a lot of other intricacies and aspects to Junker Queen that are pretty advanced. We're actually going to do a Junker Queen breakdown at some point based on some of the top Junker Queens in the space. But I don't think that, like, mechanically, you don't need a crazy amount from her besides her knife. And then a lot of the other aspects of her are more game sense oriented. Still think she's fairly difficult compared to, like, some of these, but probably around the same, like, park as these. I'm going to put her in the B tier towards the bottom. Now we got to talk about Junkrat, and Junkrat is going to be kind of in the same space as a lot of these characters. Some of the combos can be difficult. Positionally, it can be kind of difficult. He's not like the most difficult character in the world to master, but I do think that you got to give him a fair bit of respect. I'm actually going to put him a little bit above Junker Queen, just because if you want to master him, you need to know you have to be more consistent with projectiles at a more consistent basis, and of course, like learning lineups and things like that can matter as well. So I do think that he's like around here most likely. Kiriko, yeah, Kiriko's hard. Kiriko's hard as shit. I think that Kiriko actually is like here. And I'm saying, when I say to master, like reaching your utmost potential with this character, hitting consistent shots, having clutch Suzus, never getting punished. There's a lot that goes into Kiriko. I think that makes her very hard to master. One of the hardest characters to truly master in this game. Maybe she deserves less than D.Va, but I think I put her here. I think that this is fair. So I'm putting her there. You can let me know if you agree or disagree down below. Lucio. Now, Lucio's a weird one because I think that he's actually really hard to master. You have to not only master your movement, but you You have to master play styles. Another aspect to mastering Lucio is being able to understand enemy win conditions and place yourself within them, which is something that Lucio can particularly do or specifically do. And you just have to have high game IQ to really master Lucio. So when you kind of put all those together, I'm actually putting Lucio like here. I think Lucio is in between Hanzo and Genji. I think he's pretty high up. He's pretty hard to fully master, but he's not like not quite to the highest level. Now let's talk about Mei. Mei is another really high game sense oriented character. On top of that, hitting icicles isn't easy either. I think that Mei is surprisingly difficult to truly master. We're seeing a lot of Mei right now in a lot of the AMs. We're seeing some really phenomenal Mei play, and some of the Meis are pulling off some crazy stuff. You have to have really quick walls, quick reactions, good mechanics with the projectile, which is once again pretty difficult. And yeah, I think that Mei actually deserves like here. I think that Mei is actually pretty hard to master. Another potentially controversial one, but I want you to think of mastery, not necessarily floor, okay? Mercy. This one's gonna get definitely, no matter where I put Mercy, I think it's gonna get a little bit of flack. I definitely think that Mercy was much harder to master pre-nerf, when or pre-buff, or whatever you want to call it, when they took away the Guardian Angel cooldown, made it longer. The movement that was possible with Mercy before and the frequency of it had a higher skill ceiling with Mercy. It's slightly less now, but I do think that Mercy is still a bit harder than people give her credit for. I don't think that she's easy by any stretch of the imagination. Fundamentally, you still have to know a lot of movement techs. You have to really know when and where to provide value. And we're talking about, once again, mastery. So like being able to stall points, getting out of scenarios where other Mercies would have just died, knowing exactly when and where you have to force a res. There's a lot of parts to Mercy that I don't necessarily think are the easiest thing in the world. And I'm actually going to put Mercy here. And this one might be really controversial. But like I said, mastery. And I think Mercy deserves it up here. I think Mercy is actually harder to master than BAP, which might be controversial. But yeah, you let me know if you agree or disagree down below. Moira, this one might be a bit controversial, but I think that she's among one of the easiest characters in the game to master, primarily because there is no utility on this character. It's just damage and heals, and that's very simple to balance. You don't really need a lot to learn how to properly balance that. I think you do need great tracking for her ultimate, but even if you don't, I mean, it's not hard to get great tracking on an ultimate like that. You don't have to track all the time, and you're forgivable for your movement. And I know your timing has to be great, but it has to be great on pretty much every single character. I'm just putting her in the easiest category. Speaking of easiest category, we have Erisa, and I actually think, I don't know, it's a little bit difficult because I think that Erisa is actually in the easiest category. Maybe not. Javelin is still a skill shot. Actually, let's be fair. Let's be fair here. I'm actually going to put here. I know that this is a kind of a big jump, but Javelin, being able to hit a javelin from long range is hard, but it's strong. Like, imagine hitting a javelin on like a tracer that's in your backline or something like that. It does require a fair bit of skill, but like, I don't necessarily think you need to be able to do that to have quote unquote mastered the character. I'm putting her in the C tier. You know, you might agree or disagree. Pharah is fucking hard to master. I know that it doesn't seem that way when people just lock Pharah and just kill things with the Pharah Mercy, but Pharah battles are some of the highest skill ceiling battles. Go look at Yezin and look at what he pulls off on Pharah. At the end of the day, this is a character that has to play around some of the best aimers in the world and survive, strategically pick their battles, and predict, really, like, for a really slow projectile, you have to predict and hit a lot of targets. I think that this character is actually like here. I think it's here. I think very hard at the highest end to master this character fully. If Yezin doesn't prove it, I don't know who will. Maybe you could even justify it being higher, but I'm gonna put them right here. You could definitely let me know if you agree or disagree down below on that one. Ramatra. I think Ramatra is fairly hard. There's a lot of pieces that you have to learn on Ramatra. Not only proper spacing, but how to balance your aggression with your, you have to have good tracking with the primary ability. You have to play multiple play styles. You have to be very flexible. I think that Ramatra is fairly hard. I think I should put Ramatra here. Actually, let's do this. This one Maybe this will appease people a little bit, but I think that this is probably more fair. Like that. I think that that's fair. What do y'all think? Reaper. Reaper's pretty simple. I think that he is among the easier characters to master, but still not crazy easy, mainly because a lot of people don't do the teleport. They don't use the teleport right. They don't properly channel their aggression with their shift ability. And keep in mind that basically when I put characters towards the lower end here, I think that while there are a lot of mistakes that people make on these characters, I think in one training session, you could coach a lot of the stuff, a lot of the bad habits out of these players, and then they would already be playing, you know, pretty close to the mold of what a great player would be, or like a mastered player would be. Of course, they need to get better at execution, but as opposed to like, you know, I could talk all day and spend multiple days like trying to break down like everything that Diva could do or everything that Kiriko or Echo needs to do. So yeah. Reinhardt's pretty difficult in some ways, but simple in others. I think that to master the character, you just need to have really high game IQ, and you know, the mechanics is not that difficult on Rein as far as master is concerned. I mean, most even like high masters, GM Reins will have like a fairly mastered mechanical aspect, but that game IQ doesn't come till later. But like I said, most of these will still need a high game IQ. Like, you need a high game IQ. If you're playing tank at a master level, you always need a high game IQ. I think overall he's actually a bit easier than Junker Queen. Now this is gonna get people riled up when I put Mercy above Rein, but you know, it is what it is, man. I'm doing it. I don't care. Be mad at me, get tilted at me, I don't care. Next up, we got to talk about Roadhog. I think the hook is kind of where you master on this character, and the hook can be difficult, but I still think it's fairly simple. Maybe this is like a this feels gross. I don't know if this is correct. This just feels wrong. I don't know. Maybe this Junker Queen should go up a bit, like here, and maybe Rein should go like here, and then this should go here, or this should happen like that. Maybe no, like this. We're doing it like this. I don't care. Hog stays here. I think this is fine. This is fine. Let me know. This is kind of a mess. I mean, all of these kind of just are fairly simple, I think, comparatively to some of these higher ones. Anyways, let's talk about Ashe. Ashe is gonna be a bit harder than Cass, but not quite. Let's put him stacking on top here. Let's put her right there. Bob takes a fair bit more skill than High Noon. I think that hitting dynamites requires a fair bit of skill as well. I'm gonna say that top of B is probably fair. Sigma is pretty hard. I'm putting Sigma up here. Sigma requires a lot from you. Projectile fire, consistent spacing. You have to min-max your abilities really well. Apply appropriate pressure. You need to have high game IQ, of course. So you need mechanical aspects and game sense aspects. I'm going to put him towards the top, the upper end on this list. Not necessarily at the very top, but pretty high up. Sojourn. We already know that Sojourn takes a lot of mechanical skill to pull off. I think that Sojourn deserves top of A. Railgun. We've seen the potential when people master this character. It's crazy. I'm putting it towards the top of A. Maybe I need to shift some things down, but I think that that's kind of fair. Soldier 76. The only thing that you have to really master on this character is his aim. Like, everything else is fairly simple, but his aim is not. Like, to master his aim, that's pretty hard. And I think that just his aim alone at least puts him to the top of C, maybe even into the B tier. Probably into the B. Probably like here. Let's move Brig down. Let's move Junkrat down. We're putting Bastion down. I don't care. We're balancing out the scales a little bit here. I think that that's fair. I think that that's fair here. Now this is weird. I don't know. Is Rein easier than Junker Queen? I don't know. Junker Queen feels a bit harder, I think. You actually have to aim her primary fire, and a lot of the setups I think are a bit more difficult. I think like the super advanced movement of Mercy might be more difficult than both of them though. Especially like stalling an objective with Guardian Angel and doing some crazy shit. This is hard. This is really hard. I didn't think it was gonna be this hard, but it actually is. Sombra, to master this character, you need high game IQ, of course, tracking ultimates, really monitoring and being aware, good tracking. I'm gonna put towards the bottom of A. I think that's fair. I think that Sombra's fairly difficult to truly master. And a bit underrated as well. Sim. Okay, we gotta move some of these. I gotta move Sigma here. I think I gotta move Sigma here because this is the only way that this is gonna fit. Sim is a hard character to master. When I say master, I mean the utmost potential because there's so many different playstyles with this character. Teleporting in and applying pressure with flanks and getting out, you know, setting up traps and choke points, you know, building up charge. There's a lot to this character, I think, that kind of aid into the overall mastery. And I'm gonna put her pretty high up. Torb, yeah, I'm putting Torb down here. I'm sorry. I know that you have to hit projectile fire. Let's put him here. Let's put him here. I know you have to hit projectiles, which I guess adds some to his mastery, but like for the most part, this character is pretty straightforward and simple. And yeah, I'm just putting him at the top of the easiest category. Tracer. This one might be a little bit of a hot take. It might be a hot take. I think that Tracer probably deserves the top spot. Probably is the hardest character to master in the game. This is my justification for why Tracer is the hardest. Not only do you have to have good mechanical skill with both your shooting and your pulse bombs, which is a projectile, but you have to have great movement and ability-based movement. So you have to be able to 180 on the dime and blink. You have to have really good fundamentals and understanding of the threats that are on the battlefield because you have the least amount of health and you can die at a moment's notice. So you're simultaneously a super glass cannon, so you have to be like cognizant of everything and then have great mechanical skill. And I think all of that combined really adds to Tracer being hard as hell. Like hard as hell. Widowmaker. This one, another one that might be a bit controversial. I think that Widowmaker is actually easier to master than a lot of these characters up here. Let's move this down here. But easier to master than a lot of these characters up here. And here's the reason. You really only have to move on one axis, which is your mechanical skill. I mean, most Widowmakers already know how to positionally play after they're in GM. Like, your position doesn't get crazy different. It's a lot of pushing up and pulling back, playing your effective ranges. Widowmaker's pretty easy on the strat side. But past that, it's using your information to get advantage in Widow matchups, making sure that you're not peeking when you don't have an advantage or don't have information, and then hitting more mechanically difficult shots, which is an axis that I will say is hard, but I don't necessarily think it's harder than some other aspects on other characters. And this one might be controversial because some people think that Widowmaker's like crazy difficult to master and just be like a god at, but I just don't think it actually holds a candle to some of these other characters because she has great mobility and she fundamentally gets to play like positionally super far away. Most strategies and game sense and position-oriented things just don't matter on the character nearly as much as other characters. So, yeah, I'm putting her here. I'm sorry, but I'm doing it. I'm putting her there. Winston. How's it hanging? I think that Winston is hard to freaking master, man. Let's move this character down here because this row is about to get stacked. We'll put another one down here. Winston, hard to master. Reason that Winston's hard to master, not only is his timing important, but now with his new railgun, shooting that is a little bit difficult. And then Primal Rage is one of the highest skill ceiling ultimates in the entire game. I think that Winston probably deserves this spot. Maybe we do this. I think this is fair. This seems fair. Wrecking Ball. When we talk about Wrecking Ball, it's a little bit weird because what do we mean by mastery? Because I think that true mastery on this character, you need great tracking, great timing, great initiation, so high overall game sense and IQ. Positioning, not nearly as important, but still matters. But when we start to get into some of the crazy shit, like the triple boops and stuff like that, that are not legal from our understanding in pro play, I mean, then you just start to get to another realm of difficulty on this character. I actually think that he's pretty hard. I think I'm going to put him here. I think that you could probably put him even higher up this list if you include that stuff. I'm just going to generally put like an Overwatch League caliber player and not with the crazy techs. I'm going to put him here. I think that that's fair. Zarya does require a lot of base fundamentals and good tracking, good positioning, but nothing crazy, nothing insane in that department. I think I'm going to put her here. I think that's probably fair. Zenyatta is all about positioning and mechanical skill, game sense somewhat, but I mean, you're going to master that way earlier than some of these other things. Relatively difficult, but not like crazy. I think you could justify him here. Most likely. We're going to put Soldier down here. Yeah. Ana. I think Ana is one of the hardest characters to master in the game. Let me explain my logic. Ana not only needs to have practice with hit scan firing, but projectile firing, two projectiles that operate at different speeds, a nade and a sleep dart. So tons of mechanical things, and you also have to hit your mechanical things under pressure. You know, hitting a sleep dart under pressure at a mastered level is hard. Like, imagine sleeping a nanoblading Genji, or maybe we'll just say like a tracer that blinks behind you or something, because Genji doesn't see play. But also you don't have movement, so your position needs to be on point. So I think that you add all that together, and it means that Ana is hard. I actually think she's one of the hardest characters in the game. Lining it up like this, I think she deserves this spot, but that might be controversial. Overall, I have a few characters on this list that I think people are gonna heavily disagree with. Maybe these two, but I think that this is a fair list. This is my list, from the most difficult characters in the game to master to the easiest characters in the game to master. But you let me know which of these you heavily disagree or agree with, and why. I'm really curious. Smash the like, subscribe if you enjoy the content, or if you hate it, I don't care. Still smash the like, subscribe, and I will see you next time.